everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Supply Chain Podcast, Season 2, with the same aim of answering your burning supply chain questions. I'm Lou Barber, the Global VP of Marketing here at DHL Supply Chain, and I'm your host for the series. I'm delighted today to welcome Christopher Onisk, who's the Global Omnichannel Distribution Director at Estée Lauder Companies. Chris has got over 12 years of experience in supply chain operations, fulfillment, customer care, and project management. He's launched 7 distribution centres and onboarded more 3PLs than I've had hot dinners. In particular, he's interested in incorporating the ever-changing customer expectations, particularly around speed, customer experience, unboxing, etc. He's based in Houston, Texas, and he's got a 105-pound dog, Weller. When he's not doing CrossFit, he plays golf and he scuba dives. So, Chris, with all of those things to do in your spare time, how do you find time to do any work?
Yeah, no, when you have a passion for what you do, it's really easy to find time throughout the day between dog walks and going to the gym to really dig into what matters to customers and how do we drive a really positive experience from an ELC brand standpoint for our customers, especially going into the holiday season, which is super exciting.
Of course, yeah. So, look, to kick things off, you've clearly got loads of experience, including a lot of time spent at Amazon. What changes have you seen over supply chain industry in the time that you've been involved?
I think supply chain, especially online supply chain, really started with regional or even like country-led distribution centers. And I think over the past 10 years, in order to drive cost optimization, faster delivery speeds, better predictability, better SKU selection, it's really translated into a much more of a local market. And how do you get distribution centers, micro distribution centers, black stores as close to customers as possible so you could deliver faster, but you also save on your last mile transportation, which drives a lot of logistical issues of making sure you have the right SKU selection closest to customers, but it really dramatically improves the customer experience. Knowing that you can get something in some cases same day within an hour really bodes well for consumer confidence in the online supply chain.
Sure. And I guess that's where, you're the first person I've met that's got omnichannel absolutely in your title. I'm guessing that's where omnichannel comes in. It means many things to many people. Chris, can you just tell us what it means to you?
I think about omnichannel in the scope of a customer experience. I think from a supply chain standpoint, you can phrase it and mean it a million different ways. But I think about it as how do we deliver to customers in a way that they want their packages. So I think a really good example that I have is, so living in Houston, Texas, 4th largest city in the United States, there's a major mall called the Galleria, and it's pretty much downtown. And it could take you 30 minutes to go, 15 miles to get there. Estée has a number of different brand stores that are in that mall. And so when we think about omni experience, some customers want to go walk around the mall. They want to buy something in the store.
Yeah.
Some customers want to know if they're going to have to drive 30 minutes to get it, they want to know it's in the store. So they go online and they use buy online, pick up at store. Some customers don't want to deal with the mall traffic. They don't want to go at all. So they use ship from store, which can get it to them in 1 or 2 hours. Some customers don't want to pay for shipping. So they say, I'm good if I get it in 4 days and I want to buy it online, and we might ship it from one of our warehouses further away. Some customers get a product and they're not happy with it. So how do they return it? Do they want to return it and get a replacement in real time because they're going on a trip? So in my mind, those are all the opportunities that Omni allows for a customer to really have the supply chain their way. And then from a supply chain standpoint, it really allows us to figure out and dictate how we want to ship products to customers. What's the most cost efficient way to do it? What's the fastest way that we can give it to the customer? What's the best experience we can give to a customer? And so in my mind, Omni unlocks a lot of those different pieces. But ultimately what it comes down to is how do we service the customer in a way that they want to be serviced?
Yeah, and I guess both sides of the equation there, from the provider's perspective and the customer's perspective, you're absolutely delivering that flexibility that both sides need and require. Do you see the same demands on flexibility globally, or does it vary by region?
It's a good question. I would say from my perspective, I call it the Amazon, Walmart, Target trends of North America have really influenced the North American marketplace to have faster delivery speeds. UK is a smaller country. So delivery times within the UK are shorter just because of the geographic size. I would say similar to Europe. all the different countries where we have providers, the travel distance is much less than larger countries. And then I would say in the Chinese marketplace, we're starting to see more of a consumer demand for faster delivery speeds.
And have you seen any change in that over time, Chris, or is that fairly standard
for the
regional changes?
Oh, I think it's been fairly standard. I think North America from a delivery speed has been that way for the past 5 or 6 years. In all the other markets, really, supply chain from a speed to delivery hasn't had to improve as much because just logistically the countries are smaller and it's easier to get to the last mile customer.
One of the things we hear a lot from our customers is consistency, brand consistency, standardization. Estée covers a number of brands. How do you try and align? How do you square that circle? You've got a lot of brands, a lot of differences, a lot of different customers. How do you provide consistency and standardization within that context?
I would say for most of our brands from an online supply chain standpoint, it's pretty standard. The way we receive the product into the warehouses is pretty consistent. Where it's stored, the picking process is all very consistent. I think where it changes is the packing process. And the packing process will vary across brands because every brand will dictate the unboxing experience that they want their customer to have. So if you take premium brands like Jo Malone, La Mer, more expensive brands, they really want a packing process that takes care of how we fold the tissue paper in the box. Jo Malone, for the past countless years, has had hand-tied ribbons. So we train associates in warehouses to hand tie a bow onto the box, which is a really long process. But ultimately, the goal is the brand dictates when a customer opens up the box, what is their first impression of what's in there. Brands that are like Origins that are really sustainably based really don't want a lot of extra filler. They want the customer to open the box and see that we use the bare minimum in that box in order to really champion the sustainability view that brand wants to project to their customers. So it varies, but once the box is packed, regardless of the brand, it goes through the same supply chain process as a normal box would, regardless of brand.
Same underlying systems and technology?
When it comes to systems technologies within warehouses, they're all the same. We have different systems and technologies across different countries based on the need of the country. But I would say for the most part, all brands that flow through our warehouses run the same DOM systems, WMS systems, things of that nature.
Right, so you've got standardized systems and processes, but you are absolutely delivering a customized customer experience based on the nuances of the individual brands.
Yes. Yep.
I received a gift at the weekend from a dear friend. It was Jo Malone. It came through the post. I have to say, you're absolutely right. It had a beautiful bag, it had beautiful tissue paper. It was tied beautifully. The ribbon, it was exactly the same experience out of the box as it was in the store. So I get Omnichannel. As I opened it, I thought, Chris, this is what your life is spent ensuring that, as a consumer, it doesn't matter whether I'm in store having that personal experience or at home having that slightly more distant experience. The experience of receiving the brand was exactly the same.
Yeah.
So congrats on that. Yeah. That's fantastic. How do you track that customer experience, Chris? How do you work out what your customers want, and how do you work out whether or not you're delivering it?
It's a good question. So I think most recently in North America, we did a North America Consumers Insight study with our online supply chain team to really figure out what do customers want in North America, and then does this one in parallel to other regions? And what we really found is at the very top, customers want free shipping. That's like a bare minimum buy into the market, free shipping that comes with it. The second major thing, which was very interesting, is predictability. And I think this is an area that is a really growing area that Estée is putting a lot of focus into. So you might get an email when you place your order, but do you get an email or a text message when your order shipped? Do you get an email or a text message when it's out for delivery? Do you get some sort of communication when your package has been delivered? And that's what a lot of customers are really driving towards right now as I would call it an entry stop into the market for a positive experience. So I think that's kind of for a lot of companies over the course of the next couple of years, like getting technology in place to allow for a really clear communication to the customer in an avenue that they want to be communicated with. Some customers don't want more text messages. They might want emails. Some customers want the text message in the real-time prompt. I know we have some apps now that alert customers that you can use. So whether the alert is the right way to go. But needless to say, predictability from the company is very important. And then as from an online standpoint, customers love our free samples. They expect to get free samples in the box. They want to try new products, that, like not being able to go into a store and try the free samples in the store and the different tests. Online, we supplement that with free samples when you go through the checkout process, so you can get exposure to different products that you might not otherwise have exposure to.
Nice. How do you balance? I was thinking about my unpacking experience. I did get samples, by the way, of a number of. I think Joe Malone are doing a couple of Christmas specials, seasonal specials. I got a couple of samples in my box at the weekend, so thumbs up for that. How do you balance that unpacking experience with brands, drivers around sustainability these days? Is there a clash there? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think it segues between two very important pieces. So having an idea of what customers want and expect is absolutely critical. And then from my perspective, sustainability is going to be a major driving force over the next 5 to 10 years as kind of the next major pillar of what's important to customers. I think the biggest area that we try to influence is making sure all of our boxes for all of our brands are made from recycled material, that the boxes themselves are recyclable. So regardless if you're buying from Joe Malone or if you're buying from Mac, are the Jiffy Mill is recyclable, are the boxes recyclable, and are they made from recycled content? Reducing or eliminating tape. So we've moved to, and now 2 of our regions, self-locking boxes for the smaller items to where they don't need tape at all. They'll self-lock, they'll go through the transit system, and there's no tape associated with them. And then I think the final piece that I think is still an opportunity, but I think it's more for all of supply chain, is providing that luxury unboxing experience. So let me phrase, brown's not an attractive color. When someone opens up a box and sees brown, it's not like, oh, this is such a great experience. It's brown. So how do you find ways to color a box or add feeling to a box without impacting sustainability goals? So from my mind is really looking at where ink comes from and how do we do a better job of leveraging how we color boxes in a sustainable way or using sustainable ingredients. And I think that's kind of the next major step for our premium brands we're looking at is how do we get tissue paper that may be manufactured in a way that's 100% sustainable, that still has color to it, that still gives that visual appeal, but it's a positive experience for the customer still.
And to what extent are you relying on your supply chain partners for that, Chris? Is that something you ask your supply chain partner for, or do you expect your partner to come to you with ideas about how to improve sustainability within the context of the customer experience that you're requesting?
It's a good question. From my perspective, and I would say ELC's perspective, like we're not box manufacturers and we're not ink suppliers, and we don't understand the ins and outs of those supply chains. So we do go to our manufacturers, our 3PL, stuff along those lines with ideas. How do we take our sustainability targets and continue to drive them to where they need to be over the course of this decade? But we really leverage the expertise of our suppliers to say, hey, what are options that we have in this field? And maybe we don't end up selecting those options, but we still go to them with ideas of how we can do it. And I think DHL is a good example, not related to boxing, but when we talk about aviation and aviation fuel and how do we drive down emissions when it comes to that, or at least have sustainable options. The reusable, what's not reusable? It's the different as an aviation fluid that are available within the DHL team. Were options that, again, that we didn't come up with ELC, but were provided to us by our suppliers. So,
yeah. And is there something you expect from supply chain partners to help you with that white glove experience, that final bit of the brand delivery? How does your suppliers help you with that?
Suppliers are critical. Like the white glove last mile delivery to me is an extension of the customer experience. They're the last person that the customer potentially sees. dropping off the box on their Ring doorbell or their camera outside their door, or they physically interact with them. And I think that
Yeah.
experience, it leaves a lasting impression about the entire shopping experience. Like they might have had a negative shopping experience the whole time for whatever reason, but if someone delivers the box to them, smiles, is a really nice, friendly gesture, that's going to be a lasting impression for that customer. Or you have the opposite. I'm sure all of us have seen some version of a Ring doorbell or a camera capturing a delivery driver, maybe not treating the box so nicely on that last bit.
Yeah,
And
we've
that
all seen
leaves a
that
lasting.
YouTube video, haven't we, with the television?
Oh, yep. Television, the Ring doorbells of suppliers just chucking the box 10 or 15 feet onto the porch. That leaves a lasting impression and it reflects the brand. The customer doesn't think, the customer might tile it to the driver, but the customer also says, well, why does ELC have drivers from that company if they don't care about the product that much? ELC talks about the unboxing experience and all that, and then they contract with drivers that don't care about it. That does leave a lasting impression. So I think partnering and the white glove experience for me is, in my mind, especially for ELC, we think about the tertiary packaging as being this protective layer to protect the product inside of it. I think we're getting to the point, from my perspective, that if the box comes damaged in any way, shape, or form, even if the product's undamaged, it
Yeah.
impacts that white glove experience that Estee wants to deliver to the customers. If the box is wet because it rained outside, it impacts that white glove experience because the customer questions, do they really care about the box, the product inside the box? So I think it's a very interesting conundrum that we're getting to, because my entire life in supply chain, the box is meant to protect. The box isn't meant to do anything but protect the product inside. And now it's almost like
Absolutely.
the box needs to look brand new when it gets to the customer throughout the whole supply chain experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that your supply chain partners need to think about. Essentially, we're taking the place of that store representative. As you say, we're in the place of the brand, delivering that brand experience at the point of contact with the brand. And again, I guess that links really nicely into how omnichannel works. That brand pass on happens somewhere, whether it's through delivery or an in-store experience.
Yeah.
Let's move on to returns. What technological steps are you taking to make sure that the returns experience for your brands is as good as the delivery experience?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Returns are really complicated within Estee across different marketplaces and how we process them. We've gotten to the point within two of our regions to where a customer can go online, print out a return mailing label, slap it on the box, and return the product through the supply chain standpoint. And then
Mm-hmm.
in many of those instances, via different technologies. So I would say every one of our 6 regions uses a different technology at this point in time for how returns are processed, which complicates stuff from a global level. But we select the best vendor in those markets to help drive those pieces. Um, but regardless, the goal is that customers can get a refund within 3 to 4 business days of that return being received by either the distribution center that processes it, or in some cases, as soon as when the carrier gets the product. I
Right.
think Germany is a really example where we use DHL for returns. And as soon as the carrier gets the product, they scan the label, the return starts getting processed in the background because we trust the customer and we trust that they're returning that particular product to us, and we don't want them to have to wait for a refund to happen down the line.
Do you see customer expectation change by demographic? Is there something to do with age in that? Is there something to do with brand profile in terms of the expectations of the returns experience?
We haven't looked at it transparently in terms of age demographic. In terms of the returns experience in general based on brand, I think most customers at this point in time, it's much more along the simplicity and how quickly can they go through it and how frictionless, I'll use the word, they can
Yeah.
go through the returns experience. Customers don't want to spend a lot of time processing a return. They're obviously not happy with an order for one reason or another, and they don't want to spend a lot of their time going to it. I mean, even me, for example, I processed a return the other day, and like having to drive it to UPS to some degree was added friction to the process.
Yeah.
And finding ways to remove that friction for the right reasons is really important. And I think technology is a huge lever to unlock some of those friction points that we can improve for the customer experience.
Yeah, I've started to see a difference. I've got a 25-year-old daughter. I've seen her start to select brands that she interacts with online based on the potential for the returns experience. I've literally heard her say, "I'm not going to buy from them. It's really hard to return things." And I must admit, it started to rub off on me. I'm starting to look at, what the potential for that experience would be before I select a supplier.
Yeah.
So I wonder to what extent that may have started with perhaps the younger generation who are more in tune with that and are now spreading to all demographics, even old people like me.
But it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's the
Yeah,
right thing to do from a consumer experience. And that's what customers want. And at least from my perspective, I think it's what they deserve is if they're not happy with their purchase for whatever reason, they should have to explain why they're not happy with it. But after that, they should be able to return the product within reason and get a refund for it. And hopefully having a positive return experience drives resale for a better product they want because now they have trust and confidence in the company that says, okay, if I'm not happy, I can get my money back. But I know the next time if I purchase something, I had that same positive experience regardless of it.
yeah, exactly. And that returns experience is a real key driver for me in terms of repeat purchase, actually.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the Omni experience, right? If I can go buy a product online, not happy with it, I can return it in a store. Now the customer's in a store, the customer gets their refund right away, but now they're in a store and they can walk around and
Yeah.
say, hey, I wasn't happy with this. So they can get a beauty advisor to say, okay, well, let's try these other options that are available there. So I think that's the cycle that Omni continues to drive is now a customer doesn't have to wait 3 to 4 business days to get a refund. They can get it immediately, or they can get a store credit and they can just purchase a different item in the store if that's how they choose that they want to process their return.
And does that return experience extend across all your brands, Chris, or is it different by brand?
It's going to be different by brand based on storefronts. So I
Sure.
think Estee has over 25 different brands, and not all brands have storefronts. So
Yeah.
returns experience in North America, for example, for like MAC, which has well over 50 storefronts across the US, is going to be different than what it might be for Bobbi Brown, which I don't believe has any direct storefronts. So it is going to vary to some degree based on brand.
Right. And what differences are you seeing in terms of, I'm nipping back to sustainability. I'm interested to understand whether you're seeing different demands by different demographics for sustainable solutions. Is that something you're experiencing?
I would say yes. The local demographics. I don't necessarily think it's like an age type of demographic. I think it's more of a belief system, and I think
Right.
people of different belief systems tend to migrate towards each other.
Yeah.
I think a really good example in North America would be California. There's a lot of push for a lot of sustainable solutions, everything recyclable, 5R, stuff along those lines.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's the same push that consumers that live in, I'll use my state, Texas, as an example, is the biggest selling point. But I don't necessarily think it matters. Like I think over the course of the next 5 or 10 years, local governments, region, or federal governments will continue to push sustainable solutions to companies, and it's a matter of us to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
And then I think as customers see that their choice selection shopping experience isn't negatively impacted by it, they'll start to continue to buy into it and know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I find that whole ESG subject absolutely fascinating in terms of, what motivates companies with their ESG solutions. Is it regulation or is it customer demand? Interested in your view on that.
I think it's both, but I also think that we tie sustainability to higher cost.
Yeah,
Um, and I think a lot of companies up to this point have done that. I think consumers even to this point have done that. And I don't think that's necessarily the case.
yeah,
I don't think sustainability has to be at a higher cost. I think it's doing a better job managing supply chain within the company itself. A really good example is air freight. Air freight
yeah,
drives a ton of carbon emissions. And while you can look at different fuels and stuff along those lines, the easier solution is do a better job within your supply chain of predicting where you need to have raw materials, where you need to have finished goods. And then by doing a better job from a predictability standpoint, you can leverage ocean, you can leverage rail, you can leverage even truck. and drive down your overall carbon emissions, which drive down your overall cost, which in the same breath drive down carbon emissions.
Yeah.
So I think up to this point, there's a lot of this is more expensive than that. I don't necessarily believe that. I think at the end of the day, as we evolve into a more sustainable world, costs will go down for sustainable solutions, and we'll be able to do a better job of delivering to customers at the same or cheaper price points in that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think the world is changing. I'm far more cost conscious in terms of what I buy, but I am at the stage where I balance that with the damage that I'm potentially doing to the environment and how I can mitigate that damage. And I think a lot of people are moving in that direction. You know, is the risk worth the cost?
Yeah.
So, Chris, tell me, what effect are social commerce and influencers having on your sector?
It's a really good question. I think it's a growing trend. In our APAC region, a lot of our sales and stuff get driven by social comments, social media influencers, and it drives a lot of unpredictability into our supply chain, honestly, because it's not necessarily the most recent sale promo that an influencer might be picking up on. They might have found a really good product at a Mac store or a Joe Malone store, and they really want to share it with their followers. So it
Yeah,
really drives an interesting spike in sales that we might not have anticipated and might not necessarily have the stock for. And I think
right.
this really goes back and ties to the Omni experience of when that happens, how do you leverage our inventory pools across multiple countries, multiple DCs? How do you use in-store inventory pools to really handle that versus telling customers, hey, your product is back ordered. We'll send you an email in a
Mm.
couple of days letting you know when you'll get it. So and I think it's a growing trend. I know in North America, Instagram, X, a lot of those platforms are starting to offer in-app shopping for a lot of purchases. And I think it's more or less, from my perspective, will be a new wave of the future of how we shop based on what we see, whether it's celebrities, influencers, really drive on social channels to help. And it results in impulse purchases, which I think also then leads down to the returns line of I
Mm.
bought this because so and so recommended it. I got it. I'm really not happy with it. So I think there'll actually be an additional resounding impact on what does that look like from a return standpoint when people are impulse buying and then realizing that it might not be for them, even though it was for the person that they're following.
And does that change by region? Have you seen much diversification across that trend, region over region?
From an ELC standpoint, right now it's very heavy in the APAC region, so the Asian Pacific region
Yeah,
that's being followed. Is starting to emerge more and more in North America as kind
right.
of I would say the next major hub, and we're already well underway preparing for how do we supply them, where do we ship them from, tech integrations with the different companies. I would say in Europe, not so much at this point in time. Haven't seen a huge trend at this point in time in Europe, but I think it's only a matter of time before that starts happening and starts getting pushed through. So it'll be really interesting to see over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But it's not surprising that there'll be a different way of shopping that will emerge in our online supply chain business.
Absolutely, and I guess that's one of the benefits of being part of a global organisation, isn't it? A trend that you see in one region, you're able to start to recognise some of the triggers for that trend in others and anticipate the need before it hits.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. And in your role as global omnichannel distribution director, how do you measure success? Are there one or two KPIs that are more relevant to you than others, or is it a balanced scorecard?
I go back to my roots. So when I started my professional career, I started in customer care, and my job was to take calls from very, very angry customers who were unhappy with the experience that they got. Most people don't call customer care when they have a positive experience. So I go
They
back to my
whinge
roots.
about it on X or
Yep,
some,
X, Twitter,
yeah,
social media, social listening. So I measure a lot of success we do in supply chain because it's not necessarily always tangible. Like cost is tangible, how much money you spend, but customer
yeah.
experience is a very intangible piece. I look to our customer care team. Are they getting less contacts about particular areas that we're focusing on? Are we looking at post customer contact surveys to say, hey, are there any tidbits that we can glean out of this area? Those are the areas that I really go back to when I measure success from a supply chain standpoint is the voice of the customer. And maybe some of that's social listening, But that's when I go to sleep at night, that's what I think about is when I like the work I'm doing right now, are customers happy about it and are they happy the way that it's going?
Nice. So Chris, let me ask you. I know you're very passionate about customer service. How do you define customer experience? How do you work out what customers want, and how can we, as your supply chain partner, help you deliver it?
Yeah, for sure. I think customer experience is the whole, it's not just supply chain. It's, I want to look for a product or I want this product. So it's the online shopping experience, all the way through towards when the customer clicks purchase. And at that
Yeah,
point in time, that's when supply chain steps in and becomes the critical partner of delivering that customer experience. So when a customer purchases a product, they're getting told potentially when it's going to get delivered, how it's going to get delivered. So they have these expectations. And
yeah,
then it's up to supply chain at a very fundamental level to deliver it on time, deliver it in the condition that it's supposed to be, aka in most cases not damaged, and deliver the product that the customer asked for. So at a very fundamental level, in my mind, I call that perfect order, but that's what supply chain is responsible for delivering to the customer. And then in Estée, from my perspective, we try to deliver not just a perfect order, but an exceptional order. So it goes back to that unboxing experience. How do you really delight the customer when they open the package and say, wow, this is more than I expected, or this is better than I expected coming out of that. And I think supply chain controls that experience very well and is able to deliver that.
it's interesting that you should use the term delighting the customer there. It's one of our commitments to our customers. It's interesting that, it very much should be one of our commitments to your customers as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the last mile, I mean, we had talked about white glove, but the last mile experience is a reflection on the company that's sending the product.
Yeah,
So if DHL is delivering a package or UPS or FedEx, that last mile delivery that shows up to the customer is a reflection on the brand, is a reflection
yeah,
on who the company chooses for last mile delivery. And it's a reflection on whether the customer will come back and shop with us.
completely. I completely agree with you. It is about that end to end, isn't it? We're all in it together, very much a business partner to make sure that the customer experience in the purchase of the brand they've selected is a really positive one. So, I know you haven't got a crystal ball, and if you did, you'd probably be lifting it as one of your keep fit initiatives. But if you did have a crystal ball, where would you see the future of supply chain for Estee Lauder going?
I think Estee Lauder is going to be 100% globally on the bandwagon of delivering an omni experience over the next 5 and 10 years for customers. I think the focus is going to be get products as close to customers as possible to reduce cost for us, but to improve selection and delivery speeds for customers across the globe. I think that's a major initiative that our senior leadership team has, but it's also fundamentally the right thing to do for customers. It's fundamentally giving them options, selection. So I think as we march towards kind of 2030, those are a lot of the key initiatives that we're working to drive. And then hitting major sustainability goals is the next major focus area. There's a lot of focus this year and last year on reduction of air freight. And now we're translating that to tertiary packaging. It's moving into how we leverage 3PLs to drive better sustainable solutions. And how do we really fully get to a point that we're carbon neutral as a company.
Amazing. Christopher, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to meet someone with the word Omnichannel in their title. I've been waiting for this time and here it is. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. Thanks to all our listeners too, whether you're joining us on our website, via Spotify or via YouTube. Please give us your feedback and let us know what other subjects you'd like to cover in the series of Supply Chain Podcast. Thanks everyone. Speak soon.